Welcome to the MMHP and the 989. Channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history from the city by the bay. This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. And now, here's your host, Scott Baker.
We're back here at Studio 163 in Essexville, Michigan. We got a super special guest tonight. We've been waiting a long time to get her on board. She's one of the busiest people saving the world, one case at a time, one string at a time. Always with a smile, always with love. Everybody knows who she is, and we are so grateful that this Michigan musician decided to make a trek back up here. And we have Jen Cass here. How you doing, Jen?
I am so good, but now your intro's making me cry, so
hey.
pull myself back together.
Save her. No, it's the truth. This is so cool. We've been waiting a long time, and we're sitting a little bit in the dark here in the end of April, and it's kind of getting nice outside and kind of still a little chilly. And Dr. J, how's things going around the corner at the Rock Hall?
Very good. We're just about to finally get our projector that we ordered, I think 9 or 10 months ago. Finally in, the supply chain issues have gummed everything up. So that's going to be installed next week on Thursday. So that's sort of the final thing with the Hall of Fame. So that's good. Awesome. Other than that, got back into writing, so doing that.
So you were able to take a deep breath a little bit and get away from all the...
Although, I've been on a publicity tour for the Hall of Fame, and the last leg of the April edition of this is going to be Friday in Lapeer. I'm going to be doing a show called Sessions at 6 o'clock with Adam, and this one I'm going to get to play some music. So we'll be talking about Michigan rock and roll history, and got some select cuts that I'm going to play. So excited about doing that.
Excellent. Now, you also, this is going to broadcast well after, but you have artists coming to speak in May, right?
Right. May 14th, our second Saturday speaker is going to be Dennis Lauren, the poster artist. We've got 17 of Dennis's posters framed and up at the Hall of Fame, and Dennis is going to come and talk about his career. He sent me his PowerPoint, and it is unbelievable. It's so colorful, just showing all the work he's done for the past 50 plus years. Just fantastic. So, anybody that loves rock and roll art, this is going to be a real nice presentation on the 14th.
And I believe when this broadcast will be done, but this is something that you guys will be promoting all year long as something as a major stepping stone into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
And Dennis, of course, has designed a poster for the event that he will be selling at a very reasonable price, signed, so you get a chance to get a great souvenir if you go as well.
Outstanding. Outstanding. We're going to try to get him on the show, too. And
we are.
Things are
That's
lining
all
up
set.
good, so things are good.
That is all set, and, we'll do the show following his presentation on the 14th.
Okay. How you doing, Sir Fred?
I'm doing great.
All right. Is it a little brighter in here for you?
Yes, it is.
You just don't look quite as cool, though, as you did.
I thought, man, you got the old school going on. You're so old. It was like a early Elvis Costello meets...
yeah, right.
Yes, from the Trump
meets question mark.
Question mark. There you go. Yeah. Freddie came in to rock us all tonight with his looks. It was pretty cool. Mike Beatty's back from Florida. How you doing, Mike?
Doing great.
You're tan.
Thank you.
You're unusually tan. We're not used to seeing you with color.
I was outside all the time, but only spent one day at the pool, beach.
I do recall the photo of the picture going off on your stomach, shooting upward with your neck in the sunshine. And that's all we got out of it. So I'm assuming you were soaking up the sun. So.
I was.
And Van the Man?
Yep. And the next day, Van the Man was phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah.
The 20th, April 20th.
Him and his daughter. They were posting photos from that gig.
Yep.
That was cool.
Oh, I don't know if
They're on
I
Insta.
saw it.
They're on Insta. You'll see them. But we wanted to get the ball rolling tonight. This has been a long time in the works. This is one of the most fantastic folk artists of the state. In the last 15, 20 years, this name has just skyrocketed, and she moved down south a little bit on us, just around the Flint area. And Jen, how is things going now?
Things are excellent. You know, this amazing thing happened just about 10 years ago. You introduced me to Eric Janetsky.
I know that guy.
I know, who is also sort of a, legendary Saginaw music figure, guitar player for many famous bands, and totally fell in love with him instantly, married him, and we've just had a great time. So
things are working out really
all
good
good.
now.
But every time I see you, I thank you for that, because you handed me the love of my life.
Well, yeah, you and I have our own closeness of going even before that. And
Absolutely.
To the fact that clicked on that magical night was something else. That was back in the day of the singer-songwriter shows that we were popping in with Strez back in the day, and he's no longer with us. So there's a lot of rock roll history involved just in that little bit of speak right there. But that two musicians that bonded here are, and Eric's not with us tonight, but Jen, you have a legacy that even goes beyond that. So I want you to share a little bit of your backstory with us tonight. How did the bug start for you?
My father used to take me to see shows at the Ark. And this was the Ark before it was the Ark on Main. It was way back when, and it was the RFD boys and Josh White Jr. and anybody that happened to be playing. If we had time, my dad would pull me up there to go see shows at the Ark. And I fell in love with so many different people, but what always draws me in is good lyrics. You can be the best musician in the world, and that's not going to draw my attention. I have to have the story. So people like Josh White Jr., who have a story for everything, really touched me. And I always wanted to write like that, but I never really did find the time until I was in college, and I was at U of M, and I would go to the Ark and watch the open mics, and I think I could do it.
When was that?
That was probably 1991-ish, round about there. And they still have them, but Wednesday night open mic nights, I would go and I'd just sit in the audience and I'd watch. And I was always drawn to the people who were telling me stories. So at the time that I was there, it was really a golden era of the Ark open mics. Katie Curtis was there at that time. David Goldfinger, Carl Cacho. It was just a who's who, of people who went on to have really good careers in folk. And they would challenge me to come to their open mic and to try to really get up there and sing and write my own material. And I got rolling with those guys, and we started having challenges where, write a new song every week and play it every Wednesday. And before I knew it, I had a whole album. And I recorded it and sold it like everybody else did out of the back of my car when I was playing gigs all over. And the gigs in Ann Arbor spread out to gigs in Nashville and gigs in Florida and gigs in California and gigs all over the country. And the next thing I knew, I was working with John Jennings, who recorded with Mary Chapin Carpenter and produced her, worked with the Indigo Girls, Iris DeMent, a whole bunch of different people. But I caught his attention somehow, and, the rest just became a pursuit of telling the best stories I could with the very best people I could work with. And that's all I ever cared about, was telling the story. You
also have the ability to deliver it, though, with a voice that is par none. So that's a huge bonus to have the voice with the lyrics. And I could see why they just jumped on around once your voice was heard and you started popping up in our area. It was like an eye opener of hearing a person that can actually tell the story and deliver it with a feel that that's so unique, but at the same time very delivery oriented. And You make your lyrics pop with exclamation points and periods very well, and I think that was a huge thing. I could see why you jumped on and got to do all that stuff. And the John Jennings story, he went on to record and produce you.
He did indeed, yeah. He did my second album and my third album. So he did Skies Burning Red, and he did Accidental Pilgrimage. And we had actually been in the middle of a third, and he unfortunately passed away.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'd done 3 songs of the next album before we lost him.
What a fantastic...
And now they're forever lost.
Are they?
I have rough rough things that he'd sent me by email and things, but the actual masters of those we never could locate.
And they were the ones I think recorded here in Bay City, if I remember right.
The scratches were done in Bay City.
I remember he came in and I shot a photo shoot with you around then.
He came in. I was super pregnant and I didn't want to go anywhere. And he came in and we cleared out one entire room on the second floor of my house and kind of he brought up all of his equipment or what he could fit in his car and set it up, and we did all the scratch there. And then he built while I was busy, growing a baby. And then we got back to it, pretty quickly after Julia was born.
Yep. Yeah, I remember you were calling me like you couldn't believe he was making the trek.
It was insane.
Yeah, it was just happening on faster than it was.
Yeah.
Being
Well,
thought
he
of.
said you have to record. You've got all these songs. You keep sending me songs. You gotta record, and you're gonna have this baby, and then you're gonna you need that time, so you got to get this done. And he just pushed to get it done, and I recorded the last of it when I was probably 8 or 9 months pregnant. But the last part of it we did do in Virginia, in Charlottesville, is his place. But yeah, it was like right before they told me I couldn't go anywhere anymore. So I couldn't have been 9 months, but I know I was, I had to think about how I was breathing in every single song because I was, there was a baby on my diaphragm.
Amazing. That was your introduction to finally having people raise their eyes here in Bay City as well, which you were already known in the Ann Arbor area and on the tour trail as well. You've spent time with a lot of national artists, and I'm sure you've got stories you'll be able to share tonight. Yeah. But I guess the thing that I took when getting to know you was how cool your mom and dad was, and your family, grandparents, and how that evolved into your artistry. Can you give us a little backstory on the roots?
For sure. I mean, my dad was a huge fan of music. My mother was as well, but they liked different kinds of music. But my mom would spend hours. We had a big old stereo in the living room, the kind that is furniture.
Of course.
And the record player in the middle, and the speakers on the side, and the whole thing is just gigantic. And my mom would put on Joan Baez and Buffy St. Marie, and she would sit with her back to the speaker and crank it up. She would be so loud. We'd hear it all throughout the house. My mom would sit right there just with her head resonating with these women of folk. And I knew all the words to all those songs. I just grew up with them playing. And my dad was also a big folkie and a guitar player. It still plays out in a couple different bands. He lives in Wisconsin now. And my stepmom Lorene plays with him, and they're super cool in their own right as musicians. But yeah, there was so much push to think critically and to examine the world around you and to take note of what you saw and tell that in the truest way that you could. We would have dinner table conversations. I wish to God it was in the era where people had cell phones, because I would have hit record on so many of those conversations. It was just incredible, the things that my parents had done and that they knew about that never really crossed my mind. So, protest music was on constant rotation. I'm a huge fan to this day of Phil Oakes. There's so many stories that go down the Phil Oakes path.
Yeah.
But his music was absolutely essential to me. The way that he found truth and told it and did it fearlessly and without blinking, and the heat that he took for that and the damage that he incurred for that, I thought his life is such an interesting story. And, of course, a tragic ending, but there's so much in between that is worth remembering and worth telling. So, yeah, Phil was huge for me, and that was a touchstone artist for me. But my parents had everything from Motown to, old school blues to just anything. My dad just loved good music, and it didn't have a definition. It didn't have a boundary. And, he knew it when he saw it, and it came home with him and got on that big old furniture stereo, and we all learned it.
So what kind of Motown was your dad into? Was it the classic Smokey?
The classic, sure. I mean, he loved Smokey Robinson. He loved the girl groups. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of the Supremes, and we really had a good time. When the Big Chill soundtrack came out, our generation. I'm looking at Scott.
Yeah.
Again, our generation was supposedly introduced to that music, it was like, oh my God, this music is amazing. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I know every single song on the soundtrack I've known my whole life.
Right.
But, it was, that music was super fun to learn and to play and to sing. And my sister Shannon remains a wonderful singer. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out how to do those harmonies. And we loved Jim Croce, and we had interpretive dance for everything, and we'd jump off the couch and yell Bad Badly Brown lyrics, and it was a wild, crazy place to grow up. But our parents loved music, and they loved us, and they loved they were just big-hearted, wonderful people who still move through the world with their hearts right on up.
That totally instilled your path in every direction, I would say, because not only did you get to join the ARC and do all that wonderful music with all those people, but you finished school and you now get to do your day job as well, which is saving people's, and caring. I don't know what you want to go into on that, but you can tell whatever you want to tell. It's up to you tonight on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about that. It's just the other, there's so many pieces of me now as time goes on, but the, one of the things my parents were passionate about is social justice, and they would point out the systemic racism and the things that, with all these buzzwords that we're all learning about now, like we talked about that at the dinner table, and I felt moved to change the world for the better. It was not just, and that was really the mission at the dining room table, this crappy little, formica table we would all sit around. We upgraded to a wooden round table later, but we would talk about how you can make the world better. And it was not just fanciful, like, oh, wouldn't it be lovely if we made the world better? It was concrete, like, we're going to make the world better. And that was the mission, and that was the mission for my sister and for me, and it's the mission I hope to pass on to my kids. I think you really ought to do the best you can do every day of your life to do good for whomever needs it. And I really believe that with all my heart and soul. So the music is a piece of that, because it's it's a salve for the weary and for people who are so, we all know this. It's what makes you feel alive, at times when you're at your lowest. It's the thing that will bring you back up. So music is universal. It bridges every gap. And it's an important part of how I engage with the world and how I make sure that I'm doing good and spreading joy.
Does it allow you to turn off one and turn on the other, or is it an equal amount of passion where just one hand flows to the other?
There used to be a time when, I could have answered that question differently, I think. But at this point, I feel pretty integrated. I used to feel very separated. When I stepped on stage, I was Jen Cass, and that's who I was, and that was the end of it. It was a different person almost. And I think part of, maybe getting older, maybe being happy. Being really, truly happy in my life and my marriage and with my kids and my glorious stepkids. It's just, there's a point where you're just happy with where you are, and I think that makes you more productive in all those directions, and being a good parent, being a good wife, being a good musician, a good singer-songwriter, a good observer of the world, and a good person to put good into the world. So I care very much. My day job, I prosecute sex crimes, and I've done that my entire career, with very few exceptions. I've had little blips here and there where I did something different, but it's been the reason I went to law school in the first place. It was the reason that's what I wanted to do with that degree, and it's largely what I have done my whole career. But I'll tell you what, the performance experience that you get in trial crosses over to what you do in music, and what you do in music vastly improves what you can do in trial. I'm wildly comfortable in front of people, and I'm really, really interested in people, truly interested in people. So when I pick a jury, it's the most fascinating thing I do, because I get to talk to 40, 80 strangers about all kinds of things that are fascinating to me,
Right.
And I think that's part of that comes from being a performer, and part of it comes from being a person who observes life and translates that into song and stories and poetry, and it does all come together. But I feel like every single thing I've ever done came together, just really in the last 10 years to, put all my pieces together. It's the first time in my whole life I felt whole.
That's awesome. I could feel the difference with you too, and just talking to you now, everything's. It's a ball rolling forward instead of in different directions. I guess.
Right. Yeah, and it's all a part of me.
Yeah.
Every piece of it is an important part of who I am, and you can't peel away the musician.
No.
You can't peel away the sex crimes prosecutor. You can't peel away the mother. You can't peel away the wife. It's just it's
fierce.
And every new thing that I find new fascinations in life, and every new thing is equally important to you. I think I feel this pressing need, especially now, because we're getting, when I was 20, I wanted to be a star, I was driven by, I wanted to go to Nashville and be a star, and then you get a little older and you think, I don't really want to be a star, because I want to stay in one place, because I want to have kids, I want to raise kids, and I don't know how to do that if I'm on the road. And I'd spent a lot of time on the road before I had my kids.
Yeah.
And then there was a period of time where you figure out how do you bring your kids on the road,
You're right.
because you've been sitting home for a couple of years looking at them, and you think, I miss it. I miss the road. I miss the people. I miss the interaction that happens between the microphone and the first chair and the audience, that space between where all the magic happens.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out how. And, I remember starting to apply for festivals again, and it'd been a couple years before, probably 3-4 years since I'd really been out to festivals. And I applied for Boston Folk because I love Boston and I love Boston Folk, and the folks who show up at that festival are friends of mine. And I thought it'd be so great to get back out there. So I sent Dear Mr. President. I sent a couple other songs that were, topical and important at the time. And I thought, we'll just see what happens. And I got it. And Julia, my oldest, was 3 months old. At that point, I thought, how am I going to do this? Mm-hmm. But I got on a plane with this newborn, little tiny baby child. Got on a plane, I had a baby Bjorn, Snuggie holder thing. And I thought, I'm just going to see what happens. I'm going to stick this baby in this, and I'm going to see what happens. And just about the time it was my time to perform, Julia started getting insane. She was all squirrely and wanted to get out, and she was hungry, and I fed her, and I'm struggling with this, and it's tick, 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 just about to need to be up on stage. And just about then, Lori McKenna showed up and said, I'll take the baby.
Oh
and
my
I was
Lord.
like, she's got, at that point, I think she had 4 kids, 3 or 4 kids. I think she got 5 now, but she showed up and said, just give me the baby.
Oh.
And I handed off my baby to Lori McKenna.
What a story. Oh, man, I never heard that one. Wow. So
I have no idea where we started this conversation, but that's where my brain went.
No, that's awesome. How about you're prepared with the guitar, and I want to get you relaxed on the couch here in a bit. So why don't you give us a few tunes, and then we'll play a couple more before we wrap up too.
So I'll play one since we're talking about Julia and the kids in general. The thing that was a challenge as a writer and as a person who really wanted to get back out on the road was, navigating that gap of, when they really, really needed to be with you every 2 seconds, to when you had a little bit more independence as a human, as a parent. And it was a really distinct moment for me that I was in the house when I still lived in Bay City, and I was sitting on the back screen porch. And at this point, Julia and Red had both been born, and they were out in the back, and they were old enough that they were playing together. And it was the first time I saw that, where I looked out, and they were completely, fully entertained all by themselves without me doing anything. And Julia was running around the backyard with her big, this is in the era where Julia had hair way, way down her back. This crazy, long blonde hair in the sunshine, beautiful August day. And I went and grabbed my guitar, I have, so this is the song called Campbell Girl, and it's on the Lucky Now's CD, and it actually is one of the last 3 from the beginning of my the 3rd album I was doing with John Jennings.
Yeah.
But
I remember when you wrote this.
Yeah. It came out so fast, and in my experience as a writer, when things come out incredibly quickly and you don't want to change a word, you didn't so much write that song as you just channeled it. Mm-hmm. You just were a vessel that it came down through. So I always felt like this is one that was just a gift that, I happened to be listening when the universe sent it down.
Wow.
So
Fantastic.
This podcast is sponsored by our friends at Electric Kitsch, located at 2106 Kosciuszko Avenue in Bay City, Michigan. They offer new and used records, including local to Michigan original vinyl and CDs, as well as clothing, electronic equipment, funky household items, music gear, and stringed instrument repair. You can find them on the web or call 989-402-1411.
So this is Cannonball Girl. Trees swayed and the clouds rolled away, and I lay on my back in the breeze. Whispered my plans to the mud on my hands, the bruises that covered my knees. I was a child, I was reckless and wild, fearless and free and profound. I flew through the world like a cannonball girl, safe with no feet on the ground. The world did spin, casting time to the wind, and I struggled and failed and held tight to my faith and my truth, the ideals of you, the path that I hoped would be right. A young woman child, I was reckless and wild, fearless and free and profound. Flew through the world like a cannonball girl, searching for my solid ground. You were the plan that I told to those clowns, a promise I made and refused to put down. So long before you were here, laughing out loud, I could feel you. I could feel you. Watch your sweet face everywhere I place as you dance to the drummer you hear. Your perfect heart is my best work of art. You make everything else disappear. You are my child, you're so reckless and wild, fearless and free and profound. Flying through the world like a cannonball girl, safe with no feet on the ground. Go and fly through the world like a cannonball girl, safe with no feet on the ground.
Yeah, so good. Great song. Jen, can we talk a little bit about your recording history?
Yeah, sure.
You know, your first album, I didn't realize that the band that played behind you, the Red Elvises,
Yes.
you know, when I went back and listened to some of their records, it was so different from your music.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, why did you choose these musicians to back you? I mean, I'm sure you must have seen them perform live. Where did you see the connection there?
Story. Here's how this all went down. There's a guy named Eric Hockman who's a recording engineer out in Los Angeles. I have no idea where he is now. I think he's in Japan. But he went to high school with me and my sister for a while. And when I decided to record, he was the only person I knew in the world who had ever done anything like that. And I called him up and said, I've got these, I had 11 or 12 songs and I didn't know what to do with them, but I really wanted to make a record. So I called up Eric, and Eric said, can you get here? Can you get to, it was Laurel King, Studio City. Can you get here? I said, yeah, I got a Ford Escort. I have relatively new tires. I think I can do it. I've got some waitressing tips. Yeah, sure. I'll see you in 3 days. And I grabbed my dear friend, my lifelong friend, Michelle Frank, who sang on that first CD. And we jumped in the car and we camped along the way and we found cheap hotels and we got to Los Angeles in 3 days. And when we got there, Eric was in the studio and he had this wacky Russian folk band recording. And so that was my first introduction to the Red Elvises, is me basically walking into the studio and, red lights on, we're recording, so we're like super quiet, stepping in, and here's this completely insane, Russian and Ukrainian musicians together doing this weird fusion of traditional balalaika music and rock and roll and rockabilly, and it was so weird, and they were so entertaining, and I just completely fell madly head over heels in love with them. They were so amazing. So I asked them if they'd stick around, and I had no money to offer them. It was like, I got no money, but I have the studio for the next 18 hours. You want to make a record? And they were like, yeah, we'll stay. So, that's how that happened. It was completely bizarre and organic, and they dug into their folk training. They were classically trained musicians.
Okay.
And particularly Zhenya Kolikanov, who was the lead guitarist / baby balalaika player for Red Elvises, just really connected with what I was doing. And so he became, super important to that recording. But they were all just fantastic to work with. But Zhenya in particular was... clicked with me, had a vision about how he saw my vision for how I wanted it to be, and without even telling him what I wanted, he would just play it and it would be exactly what I wanted. So it was amazing.
Yeah, I noticed on all your releases, you never name the album after one of the songs.
Never do, never will.
So what Brave Enough to Say, I'm sure that had a lot of meaning for you, and what can you tell us why you chose that as the title?
Yeah, that's from a song called After All, and there was, a part of the decision was I wanted to put a spotlight on that song, which is the very last song on that record. But part of it was because that was how my parents raised me. When I wrote that line, I thought that's a...
that came from the roots.
Yeah, that's... My dad has this picture, he probably still has it on his desk to this day, where we were out just dorking around. My dad would take, Sunday, he'd go, come on, get in the car, and you just drive anywhere in Michigan, you'd end up anywhere. And he loved lighthouses, and he loved music, and, we'd just end up in the weirdest places. But we came upon this, it wasn't really a marina, but somebody had a boat in kind of the middle of nowhere, and my dad was like, oh my God, stopped the car, and, we had to get out. We're wearing these I Love Livonia t-shirts and tough skins from Sears, and it was like, go sit on that, that little pillar by the water. And he took this picture, and he was really like excited about taking this picture, and I never really understood it. And it wasn't until I was years and years older that I said, why, what was it about that? Why did we stop the car and pull over and take that picture? And he said, because the boat was called Tenacious, and that's what you are.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, Brave Enough to Say. It was just, that's the essence of who I am and who I wanted to be. There have been a lot of times in my life where I've had to stand up for what is right in situations that were wildly uncomfortable. And I always knew that it was part of the mission to be brave enough to tell the truth and to say it even when it was not comfortable.
Wow.
Or
what a story.
Yeah. So that one was easy. That one was easy.
Now
it wasn't always easy.
Now the second album, comes out in 2003, 7 years later.
Yeah. A little thing called college and law school happened there.
Oh, okay.
So took a little break.
And Sky's Burning Red.
Yeah.
Is there a story behind that?
Yeah, and that comes right back to my dad too. But that one comes from a song called Pirate. And my dad, in the mornings, he loved he had all these old phrases, and the sailors take the sailors
Red sky
take
at morning.
red sky at night, sailors
Yeah,
flight,
there you go.
right?
I still
red sky
use
in the
that.
morning, sailors take warning.
Right.
And and it holds true. It's not just
Right.
sailors talk. It actually does hold true. But that sky's burning red thing, and the indication that it could be danger, or it could be, a sailor's delight.
Yeah.
It could be either way.
Right.
And I was at a point in my life where I felt like that image and the fact that it could be a warning and it could be a really good omen from the very same thing. Just it made sense to me.
And I like the song that kicks off the album, Main Attraction.
Yeah.
And I read where you won a John Lennon
I did.
songwriting contest with that song. Could you
I did.
tell us a little bit about that? Or maybe
And
just
you know
what
what?
Main Attraction is about to you?
I will tell you, and I'll play it after that. Main Attraction for me, that was another song that kind of came out in a torrent of, a series of moments where it just shot right out. I was taking a shower and I had been messing around with some stuff on the guitar, and I had, stuff spread out all over the floor. Even now I have to write it. I can't do it. A lot of people are on a computer, they're typing into their phone, and I will do that sometimes, but the way that I still write the best is by actually writing it on paper, and I'll spread that all out all over the room, or I'll tape it to the wall, or put it on the floor so I can see all the pieces, and it's an assembly, of these things go together, and it makes the story complete. So I had been kind of brainstorming on something completely different, and I jumped in the shower, and I was thinking about what you would do to get attention these days if you had a message that you wanted to spread really far, And I thought about Alice Paul has a song called The King of 7th Avenue. And that song was kind of rolling around in my head while I was taking a shower. And that's about a guy who's standing on a building ledge thinking about whether or not he's going to kill himself. And there's a reason that he doesn't, and I won't spoil it for you, but everybody should go listen to that song.
Yeah.
It's beautifully written. But that song was kind of crossing over with this idea in my head of, if you were God or an angel or somebody who had a really important message for mankind, you can't get anybody's attention anymore. There's so much noise and so much crazy, and there's just so much going on that everything gets lost in the noise, and nobody believes anybody. Even then, nobody believed anybody anymore anyway. And I thought you'd really have to do something dramatic. And it popped into my head, the idea for the song and how it would go popped into my head while I was in the shower, and I came out completely naked with all this stuff laying on the floor that I was writing before, and I threw it all over to the side, and I wrote the entire song. It all just came right out. And I didn't even stop to put on a robe. I just didn't want to lose the moment. It was like, I got it. It was very exciting. So yeah, I'll play that one for you.
Wow.
Okay.
That's a great song.
I gotta sort of switch.
You familiar with the Red Elvises there, Fred?
Yes, I am.
I was say you're the world music guy over there. That's
Yeah, I
something
think they were at the Blind Pig one night.
They were. They did play the pig.
Right.
They did.
He walks a building ledge like other people walk on land. He says he's gonna change the world. He says he owns it in his hands. He's in the spotlight now, he will not let them down. He has become the main attraction in this godforsaken town, and the people gather in the street with the do not cross line at their feet, waiting for the main attraction's leap to fame. And now the police negotiate, grabs the horn and tries to make a deal. He says we'll get you down, we'll get you help, we know just how you feel. But high above the world, the main attraction smiles. He says, I he falls. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound, it trickles down in baritone, he sings. He turns to face the crowd, unfurls his giant iridescent wings. He hears the people gasp and leaps into the sky. He floats above their watching heads, still down the street, flies and the people gather. Slap high fights with the angels soaring through the sky. They say, I cannot believe my eyes when he's gone. The cops disperse the crowd. They tell themselves they've seen enough tonight. They flash their badges, walk their beats, and break up all the usual fights. They hit the drive-thrus and they order coffee black, and they drive around the city with an angel on their backs, and the people gather, wander home, and for once they do not feel alone. They leave everything they ever known behind. And the angel glides and laughs out loud, and he's off to find another crowd in another blind, faithless town. Another blind and faithless town in another blind, faithless town that he knows.
Yeah, great song. Certainly see why that won an award. Did you enter the song before you recorded the album, or did that come during?
I had
Or
not, it was between recording and release. So I'd recorded it, but it had not come out yet.
how did you go about entering it? In the John Lennon, that sounds pretty prestigious, with
Yeah.
Lennon's name attached
For
to
sure.
it.
That was actually a huge thrill. I've won songwriting contests, but that one really got me because who doesn't love John Lennon's writing? But yeah, I think at the time most of that stuff was done. You had to send in a CD or send in a tape. It wasn't electronically uploaded like it is now. I mean, now you just go to the website and stick your
MP3 in there.
right? But yeah, you actually had to get your padded envelope and get your thing recorded and mail
Was
it
that
all
an
up.
American Songwriters magazine thing? They may have took it over eventually,
I
but
think they may have, but they, it was advertised in a lot of we'd all read the
Yeah.
songwriting
Yeah.
magazines because we wanted to learn about,
Yeah.
who was out there doing what. And I'm sure I came across it probably in Dirty Linen or
yeah. Oh yeah,
Sing
Dirty
Out or
Linen,
something like
great
that.
magazine ever.
yeah.
Were you then presented with an award? Did you get to perform
I
it?
got to go receive it. It was really interesting. There were a bunch of things that kind of all came together at once there because I won a John Lennon and I won an American music or Americana Americana Music Award, but I didn't win an AMA. I want to make that clear. What I got was a showcase at the AMA Awards as an emerging artist. So that all came together at the same time, and I got to go to Nashville, and there were a couple other emerging artists, and so it was me and Mando Sands, who's spectacular, and we had little booths that we sat in, and people came and interviewed us for various things, and we had a moment where we could play our songs, and by that time we'd all become buddies, so we were we'd sing backup with each other, and people would sit in with you, and we'd spent the week together. But I got the worst placement of anybody. I got the lunch gig. So I was thinking, how am I going to get anybody's attention at this lunch gig? Like, everyone just wanted to eat and go back to doing whatever they were doing, and no one was interested in listening to the poor singer-songwriter who got that spot. But this song, I particularly wanted them to hear. And so many things went wrong. The sound check was a disaster, and you were getting all this feedback, and the room was a big giant thing with a huge ceiling. It was a disaster happening. But we finally got it dialed in, and by that time everyone had learned to not pay attention to me. Right? I was sound checking for 10 minutes, so they were tuned right out. But I thought about that line from the third verse of the song of Amazing Grace, and I thought, I'm going to sing Amazing Grace. and they'll shut them right up. And so I confidently walked up to the microphone, kind of had my guitar hanging off me, and I launched into Amazing Grace, and everybody shut up. It was amazing. And then I just did Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. And then I went into that song, boom.
Oh.
Dun, da, 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 da. And it was, everyone went, okay, I'm going to listen to Jen Cass now.
You pulled them right in with this.
It was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. On the moment on the fly that just...
Yeah. But what was super cool about that particular year of the AMA Awards was that the person who was really the awarded emerging artist was Brandi Carlile. So, we all got to sit around and talk. She was just like us, She wasn't winning Grammys and performing at the Oscars. She was just like the rest of us trying to scratch our way through this career, And she was just the nicest person. And, it was Jim Lauderdale hosted. He was gracious and sweet to everybody there.
Awesome.
And it was a really good time. I spent a lot of time in Nashville kind of hoping I'd break, but, fundamentally, I think the whole thing for me was I broke to the extent that I needed to get my voice heard and to get my songs heard. And then I think I was meant to do something different.
Was that still during the recording of the record? Or
the record had not come out yet.
Still not come out, but you were already working with John Jennings at the point. So that was another key, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, it's when you're trying to be a singer-songwriter and you, if you want some cred, you flip that album over and it says produced by John Jennings.
Mary Chapin Carpenter.
You have cred.
Well, you can hear the difference.
Oh, yeah.
Between the first album and the second album, the production quality.
The MMHP is hosted on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our own Libsyn podcast site. You can also search MMHP989 on Facebook for up-to-the-minute information, as well as both Dr. J and Sir Fred's album picks of the week, posted every weekend. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and the Electric Kitch at electrickitch.com. Brought to you by Michigan Rock and Roll Legends, located both inside the Bay County Historical Museum on Washington Avenue, as well as Scotty's Sandbar on Evergreen Drive at the Bay City Middle Grounds.
On behalf of the hosts, Gary, Dr. J. Johnson, Sir Fred Rife, archivist and videographer Mike Beatty, and myself, this podcast wouldn't be here without Studio 163's Alan Garcia, the voice of MMHP, Mr. Eddie Switek, our sponsor, the Electric Kitch, all of our guests, and you, the listeners.
You've been listening to the MMHP and the 989. From all of us at